Welcome everyone to MetroConnect 2021. We are in our 4th year of MetroConnect, and this program is brought to you by Metro General Services and Metro Human Resources, and our Socket program with General Services, which is Nashville's sustainability outlet. And Socket the dog is with me here today, right here. So thanks for coming. We're in our 4th year of this program, and this is the first year
who is going to give us a seasonal outlook on our weather. And then Lori with Hands-On Nashville is going to give you a OAD update.
This is the first year that we are offering tours both virtually and in person, so we're very pleased with that. And we're so excited to welcome you here today. Today we're going to take a tour of the Crime Lab. So the Metro Nashville Police Department Crime Lab was completed in 2014, and it's a 47,000 square foot facility with LEED Silver certification as a green building. The Crime Lab provides services in 5 primary disciplines and is staffed by over 50 scientists, technicians, admin personnel, and evidence receiving staff. So we're going to take a deep dive into this awesome facility, and we have a number of people here today with us who are going to help guide us. But first and foremost, we have our primary tour guide, who is Amanda Sweet. And Sweet holds a forensic science degree from Eastern Kentucky University and a master's in drug chemistry from the University of Florida. She's worked in the Kentucky Medical Examiner's Tox Lab, the Kentucky State Police Crime Lab, and in private practice. She joined Metro in 2013 and currently serves as the Crime Lab's Interim Director, overseeing daily operations of all disciplines in the lab. So before we jump into the video, again, I just want to thank Metro HR and General Services for sponsoring, and Metro Nashville Network that did a fantastic job on this video of the Crime Lab. With that, we'll get started.
My name is Amanda Sweet, and I'm the Interim Crime Lab Director here at the Metro Nashville Police Department Crime Laboratory. We belong under the Police Department here in Nashville, which has approximately 2,000 employees, 1,500 sworn officers. Our laboratory has about 50 people, and we are a full-service crime laboratory that has firearms, DNA unit, latent prints, toxicology, and drug identification unit. And our mission is to provide quality services to the citizens of Nashville, Davidson County. This is the Firearms Unit of the Crime Lab, and they receive evidence from gun crimes in Nashville, and they do 2 types of testing here. One of the types is NIBIN testing, and that's where they enter cartridge cases into a database to compare if those cartridge cases match any other ones found in any other crime scenes in Nashville or other counties or any other area of the United States. They also do comparisons on microscopes to see if bullets or cartridges fired from a weapon compare to that weapon. One of the highlights of this unit is they received the 4,000th NIBIN lead in June of this year. This is the DNA unit of the crime laboratory. They receive evidence from a variety of cases where they identify biological fluids to see if there's a presence of biological fluid that can be passed on for DNA analysis. And the goal in this unit is to try to develop a DNA profile from the evidence. And if a DNA profile exists, then it can be compared to a known standard from a suspect, or it can be run, if eligible, in the DNA database, which is called CODIS, to see if somebody has been put in the database prior and if they can make an identification that way. And then if they get a DNA match, then they can give a statistic on how frequent that DNA sequence is in the population of the world. And that is the service that this unit provides to Nashville. I'm in our evidence receiving unit. This unit receives all evidence for the forensic disciplines in the laboratory, and this is a storage facility for all of the evidence until the units come and pick it up for analysis. And I'm standing in front of the vault, which stores all of the evidence, and it's very secure with stainless steel gates and a solid door that has badge access to enter. I'm standing in front of the toxicology unit. This unit receives blood samples from the Metro Nashville Police Department to test alcohol and drugs in DUI cases primarily. And they use a variety of instrumentation to analyze the blood samples. And like I said, they're looking for alcohol and a variety of drugs, which the most common drugs in Nashville tend to be cocaine, methamphetamine, and marijuana. I'm standing in front of a liquid chromatography mass spectrometry instrument. And this is an instrument primarily used in the tox unit to test for drugs in blood. Blood can't just be run on the instrument in its natural form. It has to be extracted. So the drugs are actually extracted out of the blood sample and then put on the instrument to be run. And this instrument will actually separate out the different components of the blood if there's different drugs in there. And then it runs through this instrument portion, which is called the mass spectrometer. And this actually identifies the molecular weight of the drug so that it's a unique identification. And that's how we determine what drugs existed in somebody's system at the time of the stop. Many crimes in Davidson County involve controlled substances. This is the drug identification unit, and they receive pills, powders, liquids, plant material, paraphernalia, to test for the presence of controlled substances or drugs. And they use different instrumentation for this analysis. I'm standing in front of a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer, which is one of the varieties of instruments that can be used to identify drug material. They also use different techniques to do presumptive and confirmatory tests to ensure that what they're providing for court is accurate and reliable tests. in the latent print unit of the crime lab. And this unit receives evidence from different crime scenes. And these are prints that are lifted that aren't visible for the naked eye, that are sent up to the crime lab for comparison to a known print. And they're looking at different points, as you can see in this, they're called minutia points, to identify whether the unknown matches with the known. And I want to thank you for visiting us on this crime lab tour. And if you have any questions, you can email us at crimelab@nashville.gov. I thank you for your time, and I hope you learned something.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Amanda, and your team for leading us around the crime lab in that awesome video. And thank you, Metro Nashville Network, for making it look awesome. They did an incredible job, didn't they? So thanks to all. Now we have a great opportunity to ask Amanda, the Interim Crime Lab Director, as well as many folks from her team. We have Sarah Turner, Ryan Kent, Ian Fleming, Luann Corcoran, and Monica Kent, and maybe a couple others who have joined who represent those various divisions within the crime lab who are here on our meeting to answer your questions. So I hope that the video piqued your curiosity and that you have some questions or curiosities to ask Amanda and her team. And if you will, if you can, unmute yourself and introduce yourself, your name and department, and then ask your question, and then remute yourself. That will be perfect. If you're not able, if you don't have audio, you're welcome to chat your question, but we'd love to have you unmute and ask your question with your voice. So please, who wants to be first? Go right ahead.
This is Sandra Walker from Procurement. And forgive me if this is a stupid question, but when does it leave Metro's crime lab and go to the TBI's crime lab?
Okay, so the TBI Crime Lab is a completely separate entity from the Metro Nashville Police Department Crime Lab. The TBI Crime Lab does all counties in Tennessee except for Davidson County. And when we started the crime lab in 2015 is when we started taking cases. So we started doing Metro Nashville Police Department cases in our laboratory. So they do not go to the TBI laboratory.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
This is Gloria Hauser in Bellevue, District 22 councilperson. When you mentioned the Davidson County Crime Lab is separate from the TBI, how are they connected? How do they share information? And what's that time lag between something happening in Davidson County and us knowing whether there's information that TBI might have that is helpful? So basically the time frame that it takes to connect those two, and how does that work?
I feel like what you're asking would probably be more on an investigative side. We don't necessarily share our reports with the TBI Crime Lab. So if there's an investigation going on, there might be some police officers that are investigators in the Metro Police Department that shares information with TBI investigations, but our labs don't do the same casework.
So what is that time lag between getting that information back and forth?
That would be a question more for the police department in investigations.
Hi, Yoshi Koala, General Sessions Court. Do you all do any of the surrounding cities or counties contract with you to do any of the work that maybe they're not able to do in their community?
Not at this time. We don't have contracts with surrounding counties. Now, we do have databases in the lab. We have NIBIN, APHIS, and CODIS. Those are the 3 databases for DNA, firearms, and latent prints. And those databases do search local and surrounding counties as well as different states. So we have the ability to share that kind of information, but we don't contract to do other counties' work.
It might help us to understand, okay, crime happens in Murfreesboro and data's connected, fingerprints, whatever. So little Murfreesboro's holding on to this information. A crime happens in Davidson County. How do we know that information that's in another county to access it to know this guy's the same one that did this over here? And so kind of help explain that, because I think that's part of what we're aiming at.
Okay, so we do like those databases that I mentioned, and Ryan or Monica that work with APHIS and NIBIN might be able to answer some of these questions for you, but we do have databases. Let's say we have a fingerprint or a cartridge case that's run through this database and it hits to something, we issue a report to the submitting officer. And then it would be their responsibility to make those connections. So we might have a case that hits to another crime in those databases, but our laboratory just issues the report to the investigating officers. And then it would be their role to initiate that conversation with other outside agencies or other counties. So we test the evidence and we issue our findings to the officers.
Is your agreement with General Services? I'm curious, as far as the database, the information that you collect, is it something that's shared with, like, for example, the FBI or anything? For example, I'm just thinking in terms of, let's say somebody is fleeing a state and they're in Tennessee and something happens here. How is the data shared nationally? If it is at all.
Is anybody, Brian, Ian, or Monica, can you all answer those questions a little bit better as far as the databases are concerned?
Yeah, can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so as far as the Firearms Database and NIBIN goes, it is ran by the ATF. So all the information that we input under the Nashville Police Department Crime Lab into the system is accessible by the ATF. However, our searches don't automatically search nationally. They search against the entire state of Tennessee, of course, in some outlier areas, and then like the ATF office in Atlanta. But we would need information from an investigator that they believe there's a connection to maybe a specific state or city, and then we can go into the system and we can manually search against that region or that area that they've given us, but it's not an automatic thing, and it has to come from the investigative side. And then to go back to a question about how the information is shared with the more local jurisdictions in the state, when we get what we call NIBIN lead, where we get an association between two different cases, if they are outside of Nashville, we have pretty much a contact for each agency. So like the TBI, I'll include the supervisor of the Firearms Unit with the TBI in my email dissemination when I send out that information to our investigators, and then she can distribute that to the agency or the department that submitted their evidence to the TBI and put it on there. Same thing with Murfreesboro. They have a system, and we have a contact with them. So if we get a lead or a case, one of our cases hits to a Murfreesboro case, I'll include them in the dissemination as well.
There were a couple of questions that came in the chat, Amanda or team. Sonia Allman from Water asks that she says that the MWS Research and Analytical Lab is state certified, and wondering if the crime lab has to receive any certifications.
Yeah, so the Crime Lab is currently ANAB certified, which is a national accreditation. So that means that we follow a set of standards that most crime labs in the country adhere to. And we are assessed on those standards annually, but we go through an entire reaccreditation every 4 years.
And then another question from the chat, what kind of fire suppression system is in the building? Something besides sprinklers due to all the expensive and sensitive equipment?
We actually do have sprinkler systems up in the building, even with the expensive equipment. Now, if they went off, there might be some that would be damaged, but that's still the system that we have in place.
And Ken Feith from Metro Archives asks, how long do we keep records? Would, say, an unsolved murder case be kept more or less permanently?
So we have a data entry system that stores all of our analytical findings. So we're an electronic laboratory, so everything is stored in that database. And so everything would be stored in there indefinitely.
And then Kevin from HR asks, do we keep records or statistics on the effectiveness of the crime lab? And I don't know if you need more info to answer that or if that is enough information. Kevin, do you want to, if you can come off mute?
Sure. More so just kind of, do we have any idea how many crimes have been solved or anything like that based upon the information achieved from the crime lab?
We know how many cases, we have metrics to show how many cases that we've worked and how many requests we've had, how many items of evidence, how many tests we've performed. I don't know how many crimes have been solved necessarily, because that would probably be more on the investigative side. We know how much work that we have done. What that's resulted in, we might not necessarily have all of that information.
Going back to the records question about keeping records, how far back do our records go at the crime lab?
Okay, so we opened the crime lab in 2015. So everything from the beginning of the crime lab is stored in our data entry system. But then prior to 2015, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation was working those cases, so they would have those records.
And Amanda, can you talk a little bit more? I think we talked about this when we filmed the tour, but Nashville having its own crime lab is a little bit unique, isn't that right? Are we unique in the state of Tennessee for having a crime lab that serves just our city and county?
Yes, so to my knowledge, the Metro Nashville Police Department Crime Lab is the only city crime lab in the state of Tennessee. There are some other states that do have their own crime labs, but usually it's as cities grow, they find the need to have their own crime labs for better turnaround times, and that way the department has a little bit more say so on what gets prioritized as far as testing goes. But right now we're the only local crime lab in the state of Tennessee.
Thank you. And Council Lady Hauser asks, are rape kits stored at the crime lab? What is the backlog on reviewing those?
Okay, we do receive the rape kits at the crime lab. Everything goes through our property room, and then it comes to the crime lab to be tested. So we don't store things indefinitely at the crime lab. We will bring them to the crime lab, do the analysis, and then they get sent back to our property room. So we do get the rape kits at the crime lab while we're in the process of testing them, and then they're returned to another storage facility.
And is there a backlog?
What is the backlog? Because I hear horror stories about cities that have like a 5-year backlog in reviewing the rape kits, and in the meantime, this person continues committing these crimes. So what is our backlog in Nashville?
Okay, when we talk about backlog, a lot of it depends on if a case has been requested to be prioritized. So we have like a general backlog, but then we have some cases that, depending on people can get approval through the police department to have some cases prioritized, which means we would work them more quickly. than other cases. So I would have to pull metrics on the current backlog. It is not 5 years. I know some cases are being reported as early as maybe 3 to 6 months prior to releasing the report is when we receive them.
Other questions? And I also want to invite Amanda's team, Luann, Monica, Ian, Ryan, Sarah, if you guys want to jump in about anything that was mentioned and make any additional comments about it, or if you just want to clarify anything more specifically about what your unit of the crime lab does, feel free to jump in.
I have a question. I can go. Hi, my name is Katie Petroli, and I work at the Parthenon, which is part of Metro Parks. I'm wondering, I'm just curious about people's backgrounds. It was a MNPS career fair yesterday. So could any of you who work over there explain, what did you study in college or different schools? What background kind of got you into this type of work?
This is Emily. Can you hear me? I'm sorry, I joined a little bit late. I'm Emily Bright. I'm currently the quality manager for the crime laboratory, and previously I was the drug identification supervisor. I have a bachelor's of science in chemistry, and I also have a master's of science in forensic science.
This is Monica Kent, and I am a scientist in the latent print unit. My background is that I have a Bachelor of Science, specifically in forensic and investigative science. So my schooling was very focused in my last couple years on the forensic side of investigations, such as latent print examination, firearms examination, blood stain pattern analysis, and crime scene.
Hi, my name is Julie Ellis. I joined a little late too. I'm the interim DNA supervisor, and I also have a bachelor's of science in biology. To work in the DNA unit, you need a bachelor's of science in the natural science, and also 4 classes: a biochemistry, a molecular biology or cell class, a statistics class, and a genetics class.
Hey, Julie, I didn't realize you were on here. Can you better answer that, the rape kit question?
I might have missed it. Is it in the chat window?
The question is, are they stored at the crime lab, but more specifically, what is the backlog on reviewing the rape test kits?
Reviewing kits comes along as we're reporting on, so they're always constantly in review. Like Amanda, I did hear this question. Like Amanda commented earlier, the rape kits are stored at ESS, the property room, and then brought over for testing here. While they are here, they are stored in an individual's custody. One person has a key to that locker, and they keep it sealed condition while it's being tested. For the backlog, the metrics, I believe we have it's a little over 300 kits that have not been tested as of today.
Thank you, Julie.
Mm-hmm. And we had a follow-up about the career question from Jesse in the chat about what is the typical hiring process? Is it straight out of college, or are there stepping stones that need to happen first? Or is it all across the board? What does that look like for the crime lab?
It depends on what job that we're posting for. So we have forensic technicians, which depending on the unit usually requires a bachelor's degree in a natural science. And then we have forensic scientist 1, forensic scientist 2, and forensic scientist 3. So those are all based on experience. So entry-level positions, which would be a forensic technician or forensic scientist 1, the requirements for that position would be the bachelor's degree. As far as a forensic scientist 2, you would need to have 2 years of experience in the field that you're applying for, and a forensic scientist 3 would be 5 years of experience. So we do hire straight out of college. It would just depend on what position you've applied for.
Any last questions? We probably have time for one more question. Anybody got a question they'd like to close us out on before we move on to our quiz?
I'll ask one. Freddie Adams, General Services. Can you describe some of the types of equipment that you use to store evidence, and also detail some of the conditions that need to be met in order to preserve evidence?
Okay, I'll speak in general terms as far as our evidence receiving unit, and Luann can speak more specifically to this, but we have, like I described in the video, we have evidence vaults, kind of have those roller cages. I know you can see that a little bit in the video where we store the evidence. Everything is behind badge access, so it's very secure. We do have some evidence like the blood alcohol kits that come in that are stored refrigerated. We do have very specific packaging requirements for some of the units that I can let some of those supervisors speak to that. But are you wanting to know, I mean, as far as equipment or anything, we just have a location to store, you know, evidence that comes into the laboratory in a secured facility.
Our vaults are temperature controlled to where they are kept at a lower temperature to where the evidence is not overheated or anything. And like she said, we keep it all in a sealed condition. My gun and DNA evidence is kept separate from the drug evidence in 2 separate vaults.
Great. Thank you all. Amanda, thank you, and thank you your whole team for taking time to come and answer our questions today. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 questions left in the chat, so if you and your team want to just scan there and you can answer them there, but we'll move on to our quiz. So I'm going to put this here in the chat. Hopefully you were paying attention during the video. We're going to do a fun quiz, and the winner will receive a kit of socket swag, so a t-shirt, a tote bag, a water bottle, and lots of other fun stuff. So the stakes are high. Get ready. So to play this quiz, what you're going to do is open up a browser, either on your computer like a new tab, or you can do it on your phone, and you'll go to menti, MENTI.com, and I'm going to pull this up so you know what code to enter here. You'll enter your code, you'll make a kind of avatar, and you'll be able to play the quiz. Okay, so if you'll enter this code, again, go to menti, MENTI.com on a new browser and use the code 4390241. And you should be able to choose an avatar, put in a nickname, and then you'll be entered to play the quiz. So again, menti.com 4390241. And you can see here we are, we're all gathering. Everybody make their little avatar. I'll give folks a few more seconds to do that. Menti.com 4390241. And now you're going to get points in this quiz not only for answering the 5 questions correctly, but also quickly. So it's about speed and it's about accuracy. And the questions are based on what we learned in the video. Okay, here we go. All right. All of the following are sustainable features of the Metro Crime Lab, except okay, 5 seconds, get your answer in quickly. Okay, most of you got it correct. That's right. All of these are sustainable features. LEED Silver certification, use of native and drought tolerant plants, and a white roof to reflect heat, but not a green roof. So good job, most of you. All right, here's our next question. Which of the following is not a unit of the crime lab? Very good, very good. Yes, CSI is not a unit, but firearms, DNA, and toxicology certainly are. Very good. All right, on to the next question. NIBIN stands for the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. True or false? Very good. All right, we hardly tricked anyone. Good job, it's true. Okay, question 4 out of 5. We're getting toward the end, so quick and accurate for the most points. The toxicology unit analyzes all of the following except beautiful, that's right. STDs are not analyzed in the tox unit, but the rest of these things, drugs, toxins, blood alcohol level, all are. Okay, let's see where we are, who's in the lead. This is our leaderboard showing those of you that have been fastest and most correct. And so far, ooh, looks like Dustin is just barely edging out Freddie and Angie and some others down there. So, okay, let's see if Dustin can hang on to his lead. We've got one question left. Looking at you, Freddie. Looking at you, Angie. Edge him out. Last question. When testing for drugs in blood, mass spectrometer does the following. It's actually identifying the molecular weight of the drug. This one was tricky. I think it was tricky because, and correct me if I'm wrong, Amanda, but the mass spectrometer does separate the blood into its parts, but not the drug per se. Hopefully I've got that right.
There's 3 different components to the instrument. So the first one is where you inject the sample, and the second portion is called a liquid chromatograph, and that's where the drugs are separated out, but then the mass spectrometer identifies the drug based on molecular weight.
Okay, so I might have been really tricky on that one. Sorry, guys. But let's see who won according to my answers. Drum roll. Whoa, Pingu, whoever, penguin got person. Congratulations, a win from behind. Okay, Pingu, if you will let me know who you are in real life, reveal your identity, I will get you mailed a fabulous Socket Swag prize kit. Congratulations. Thanks everybody for playing. Good job. So with that, I want to again thank Amanda and her team. And I want to give you guys a little bit of to-dos as we kind of wrap up here today. So yes, again, thanks to MNPD and the Crime Lab, Amanda and your whole team. We really appreciate you. And thanks as well to Metro Nashville Network for the video. If you guys would please take a survey to help us out and help us make these tours better in the future, you can see the link right there in the chat. It's very quick, should take less than 2 or 3 minutes. Just let us know what you thought. Secondly, we're doing something different this year. If you are inspired by the information that you've learned today, we in our sustainability division are challenging Metro employees to save resources, save energy, save water. And so we've developed a sustainability checklist. It's just a front and back pager. You can find it right here at this web address. And what you'll do is you'll take it to your workplace, whether that's a home office or in an office building, and you'll just check off in a variety of categories: waste, water, food, things like that. some questions, and it'll give us a sense of whether or not your office is green, eco-friendly, and sustainable. And if there are opportunities for you to improve the sustainability of your workspace, we in our division will be happy to help you do that if you're interested. So check that out, and you can return it to me or let me know if you have any questions. And then lastly, we want to ask all of you to encourage your colleagues to sign up for tours. We still have one virtual tour and one in-person tour next week. Our in-person tour is of the cemetery, and our virtual tour is of the Fulton campus green infrastructure features. So check it out on socket.nashville.gov/connect. Sign up yourself and encourage your colleagues to do the same. Since we have a few more minutes, Amanda